From the mist-shrouded slopes of Rwanda, Uganda, and the Democratic Republic of Congo, majestic gorillas emerge, resembling powerful giants, concealing a calm, docile nature dedicated to protecting their group and caring for their offspring. In the dense forests of Central and West Africa thrive the intelligent, in the vast African. Chimpanzees represent one of the greatest displays of intelligence in the animal kingdom, revealing behaviors that continue to surprise scientists worldwide. Savannah's baboons have transformed group unity into their greatest weapon against a world full of dangers. In the humid forests of Central Africa live the colorful mandrills, primates whose impressive combination of colors hides one of the most organized societies in nature. High above the African forest floor, colobus monkeys have transformed the treetops into a kingdom where few primates can live with such skill. Each environment created a different solution to the same challenge: survival. The mandrill, the world's largest monkey species, displays a facial pattern that combines deep blue on the cheeks with intense red around the nose, a coloration that intensifies dramatically during periods of social excitement or hierarchical competition. Dominant males, identifiable by the intensity of these colors, communicate social status instantly through this visual signaling, eliminating the need for constant physical confrontation within groups that can number in the hundreds, one of the largest social aggregations ever documented among non-human primates. Inhabiting the dense forests of Gabon, Cameroon, and the Republic of Congo, mandrills spend most of their time foraging on the forest floor, turning over foliage in search of fruits, seeds, insects, and small vertebrates, supplementing their diet through opportunistic omnivorous behavior, rarely associated with the popular image of strictly herbivorous monkeys. This dietary flexibility allows large groups to move through relatively wide territories without rapidly depleting local resources, a crucial factor in sustaining social aggregations of such exceptional size. The hierarchical structure within these gigantic groups follows a complex matrilineal system, where females remain in their natal group for life, while young males disperse upon reaching sexual maturity, a pattern that reduces inbreeding and maintains relatively healthy population genetic diversity across successive generations. Researchers studying vocal communication in mandrills have documented a surprisingly complex sound repertoire, including specific vocalizations to coordinate group movement through dense vegetation where direct visual contact becomes virtually impossible. And it is precisely this need for communication across visual barriers that connects the mandrill to another species of African primate, whose collective warning strategy developed a completely different solution to the same fundamental problem of group survival. Unlike mandrills, which inhabit dense forests, baboons primarily occupy open savannas and transitional areas between forest and open fields across a vast expanse of the African continent, adapting their social behavior to an environment where terrestrial predators represent a constant and visible threat. Baboon groups, typically composed of dozens of individuals organized in a rigid hierarchy among both males and females, maintain a collective vigilance system that rivals in sophistication any documented warning mechanism among medium-sized terrestrial mammals. Specific alarm calls, differentiated according to the exact type of predator identified, leopard, eagle, or snake, for example, allow the entire group to react appropriately and immediately to the specific threat detected by any sentinel individual, a referential communication system that researchers consider one of the most sophisticated ever documented outside of human communication. Adult males, significantly larger than females and equipped with canines that can exceed 4 centimeters in length, frequently assume an active defensive position against predators that approach too closely to the group, physically placing themselves between the threat and the rest of the troop. The matrilineal social structure among female baboons determines access to resources and hierarchical position, which remains stable across generations, with daughters essentially inheriting their mother's social status within the group hierarchy. Males, in turn, actively compete for dominance, which grants preferential access to reproductive opportunities, creating a complex social dynamic where temporary alliances between males often determine the outcome of hierarchical disputes that no single individual could win alone. This capacity for collective alerting and cooperative defense, while effective against conventional terrestrial predators, proves completely inadequate when faced with a type of challenge that another primate species, adapted to an almost entirely arboreal life, had to resolve through a radically different strategy. The colobus, a genus of primate that has almost completely lost its opposable thumb throughout its evolutionary history, has compensated by developing one of the most efficient arboreal locomotion capabilities among all African primates, leaping between distant branches through movement that seems to completely defy conventional laws of physical balance. This seemingly limiting anatomical adaptation actually optimizes the ability to grasp fast-moving branches, eliminating the need for fine-tuning that a complete thumb would require during high-speed jumps between distant fulcrums. The colobus's digestive system represents another remarkable evolutionary adaptation. A stomach chamber divided into multiple compartments, similar in function to the digestive system of ruminants, allows for bacterial fermentation of mature leaves that other primates simply could not process nutritionally. This radical dietary specialization, focused almost exclusively on abundant foliage available in the forest canopy, eliminates direct competition for food resources with other primate species that depend primarily on scarcer and more unpredictable seasonal fruits. Colobus groups, typically smaller than baboon or mandrill aggregations, maintain relatively stable arboreal territories, with males occasionally performing long-distance vocal displays at dawn. This behavior serves both to mark territorial presence and to coordinate the position of neighboring groups, avoiding unnecessary direct confrontations through acoustic communication that propagates considerable distances through the dense vegetation of the forest canopy. The characteristic black and white plumage of several colobus species, with long white hairs forming a distinctive pattern around the body, possibly functions as disruptive camouflage that makes it difficult for aerial predators such as crowned eagles to identify the body outline, although researchers still debate whether this visual function represents the complete evolutionary explanation for this very specific and visually striking color pattern. The colobus, a genus of primate that has almost completely lost its opposable thumb throughout its evolutionary history, has compensated by developing one of the most efficient arboreal locomotion capabilities among all African primates, leaping between distant branches through movement that seems to completely defy conventional laws of physical balance. This seemingly limiting anatomical adaptation actually optimizes the ability to grasp fast-moving branches, eliminating the need for fine-tuning that a complete thumb would require during high-speed jumps between distant fulcrums. The colobus's digestive system represents another remarkable evolutionary adaptation. A stomach chamber divided into multiple compartments, similar in function to the digestive system of ruminants, allows for bacterial fermentation of mature leaves that other primates simply cannot process nutritionally. This radical dietary specialization, focused almost exclusively on abundant foliage available in the forest canopy, eliminates direct competition for food resources with other primate species that depend primarily on scarcer and more unpredictable seasonal fruits. Colobus groups, typically smaller than baboon or mandrill aggregations, maintain relatively stable arboreal territories, with males occasionally performing long-distance vocal displays at dawn. This behavior serves both to mark territorial presence and to coordinate the position of neighboring groups, avoiding unnecessary direct confrontations through acoustic communication that propagates considerable distances through the dense vegetation of the forest canopy. The characteristic black and white plumage of several colobus species, with long white hairs forming a distinctive pattern around the body, possibly functions as disruptive camouflage that makes it difficult for aerial predators such as crowned eagles to identify the body outline, although researchers still debate whether this visual function represents the complete evolutionary explanation for this very specific and visually striking color pattern. Colobus monkey hatchlings of various species are born completely covered in white fur, contrasting sharply with the dark coloration of adults. This characteristic facilitates immediate identification by group members and frequently triggers intense collective grooming behavior among females. As they grow, this light fur is gradually replaced by the species' definitive pattern during the first few months of life, coinciding with the development of locomotor and feeding independence. Their almost exclusive dedication to leaves also leads colobus monkeys to spend long periods resting between feeding sessions, a behavior necessary to allow the complex digestive fermentation process to occur efficiently. This strategy reduces daily energy expenditure and perfectly complements a diet rich in fiber, but relatively low in calories compared to fruit consumption. Despite these extraordinary adaptations, several colobus populations currently face increasing pressure caused by deforestation and fragmentation of African forests, making habitat conservation essential to ensure the survival of these highly specialized species. While the colobus monkey completely dominates life in the canopy through extreme specialization, another species of African primate has chosen a completely opposite evolutionary path, developing cognitive abilities that defy any simple expectations about animal intelligence. Chimpanzees documented using specific tools for distinct tasks: modified sticks to extract termites from termite mounds, stones used as hammers and anvils to crack hard fruit shells, chewed leaves transformed into improvised sponges to absorb water from inaccessible cavities, reveal cognitive abilities that have definitively challenged the long-held assumption that tool-making and deliberate use were exclusively human characteristics. Different geographically separated chimpanzee populations develop distinct tool repertoires, a pattern that researchers classify as evidence of cultural tradition transmitted through social learning across generations, not merely genetically programmed instinct. The social structure of chimpanzees, organized into communities that can include dozens of individuals divided into temporary subgroups of fluid composition, reveals a political complexity that rivals human social dynamics on a smaller scale. Strategic alliances between males determine access to leadership positions. Females exert significant social influence through long-lasting relationships with each other, and occasional conflicts between neighboring communities have been documented, including coordinated behavior that researchers hesitate to describe as anything other than organized territorial conflict. Observation. Vocal and gestural communication among chimpanzees includes a repertoire that researchers continue to expand through detailed behavioral studies, revealing a capacity for specific reference to objects, individuals, and situations that approximates, although is not identical to, fundamental elements present in more complex language systems. But even with all this cognitive and social sophistication, there is still an African primate whose brute physical strength and seemingly contemplative behavior completely defy any popular stereotype about natural aggression among great apes. The largest primate on the planet prefers leaves to confrontation. Gorillas. Both the lowland species and the mountain subspecies that inhabit the volcanic slopes of Rwanda, Uganda, and the Democratic Republic of Congo completely disprove the popular image of constant ferocity culturally associated with these animals through decades of distorted representation in films and popular media. Adult males, known as silverbacks, due to the distinctive coloration of fur that develops on their backs upon reaching full maturity, can exceed 200 kilograms in body mass, but they dedicate the vast majority of their daily time to peaceful activities, careful foraging for vegetation, prolonged rest in groups, and gentle social interaction among members of their extended family. Gorillas' almost entirely herbivorous diet, based primarily on leaves, stems, bark, and occasionally seasonal fruits when available, requires a prolonged digestive process that explains extended periods of rest throughout the day, interspersed with careful feeding sessions that can consume most of the available daylight hours. This relatively low-calorie diet, compared to diets richer in animal protein, also explains why gorillas maintain relatively smaller territories and more limited daily movement compared to chimpanzees, which supplement their diet through occasional hunting and a greater variety of available food resources. The social structure centered on the dominant silverback male, who actively protects the family group against external threats and resolves internal disputes through displays of intimidation, including the iconic behavior of beating his own chest, which serves both to communicate physical strength and to avoid unnecessary direct physical confrontation, reveals a social system that prioritizes long-term stability over constant conflict. Females, although occupying a subordinate hierarchical position compared to the dominant male, maintain close social relationships among themselves and with the offspring of other females in the group, creating a network of mutual support that benefits the entire extended family structure. Remaining populations of mountain gorillas, critically endangered by decades of habitat loss and illegal hunting, are currently showing encouraging signs of gradual population recovery, a direct result of decades of continuous investment in cross-border conservation between Rwanda, Uganda, and the Democratic Republic of Congo, as well as controlled tourism programs that directly fund territorial protection and regular veterinary monitoring of known family groups. 5 completely different species facing the same fundamental challenge of surviving as a group. Vibrant colors, collective vigilance, extreme digestive specialization, improvised tools, restrained physical strength. Each strategy reveals that intelligence and social complexity have never been the exclusive privilege of any single species. Perhaps it is precisely this diversity of solutions that definitively proves that the African forest has always been much more than a backdrop. It has always been society. If this journey through the complex societies of African primates surprised you, subscribe to the channel to follow the next expeditions, leave a like, and share with someone who also needs to learn about these 5 extraordinary species.